We're going to start. Maria, I think you should let people in, though. We're going to do a 5-minute meditation, and uh, it's maybe a little different from what you've done before. It's something that I've been thinking about, and that is, well, that's kind of weird to think about because it's something I've been doing, and that is to do a meditation. And we're actually going to do a body scan, but we're not going to use any words. So start at the top of your head, and you could visualize it in different ways, that you were a hand moving over your body, or you were just like aware of the sensation, and go to each ear and go to your nose and go, to your eyes and go to your mouth and see if you can feel your lips, but don't try to stay away from the idea of saying ear to yourself or mouth or cheek or skin. Just try to be there as if, I don't know, this doesn't make sense, as if you're blind, but as if you're touching, as if you're feeling. And we'll do that for 5 minutes, and then we're going to do the next thing. But before we do that, we need to come into the room and bow to our chair. So let's do that. If you don't mind getting up. And we're going to bow, and we're going to enter with our left foot, and then we're going to bow to the room. And then we're going to bow to our chair, then we bow to the room again, and then we sit in the chair, and we turn clockwise. And remember that we're doing this for all beings, whatever you think of as a being. It's not just for you. The world is desperately in need of this business that we do. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. So just try in one sentence. I'll call on you to say something that came up that you experienced that surprised you. And what surprised me was about 55 years ago, I was in a sculpture class and we did this project where we were modeling a head, but the clay was inside of a paper bag. So we never got to see what we were doing, but our hands were in the paper bag and we had a model. And I remember the teacher telling me, hey, that looks more like you than the model, look like me. And then I did that when I taught sculpture. I did that same project. And it's, so as I never got past my face, and there was a lot to explore there. And I was feeling like I was in this paper bag, feeling the clay. Claudine.
Yes. What I felt and surprised me was after a moment, as I was not talking in my head as I usually do, I had a feeling that my body and my mind were just one. And that was very inattendu, unexpected.
Thank you.
And nice.
Rosemarie.
Okay. I forgot about the body scan because the last thing you said before we started was, remember, this is for the whole world and all being. And I just, that was, yeah. And and when we came back together and you said, well, and I remembered that, oh my God. That was where I was at. So yeah. Not the body scan, but for all being. Yeah. Sorry.
I don't think that's a bad sin.
Okay. Thank you.
Allison.
I was just surprised at how good my body felt. I don't think I've paid attention to my body recently. So the fact that I was like, everything feels really good. I like that little pleasant surprise.
That's interesting. And I think we feel it more when it hurts, don't we?
Yeah, and I've been struggling with chronic pain, and I knew I was having a good day, but I guess now I know why, because I feel good.
Thank you. Jessica.
The crown of my head is very tingly.
Nancy.
I feel a great sense of relax. I think this is what they said. Just 15 minutes of meditation can substitute for an hour of sleeping. That's what I feel.
Thank you. Becky.
I have so many sensations going on, it would be hard to get them all into a single sentence.
Thank you. Lisa.
The top of my head felt like it kind of just opened up and I felt some joy. And then I was focusing on my eyes, my ears, and my mouth. And then I realized I'm going to die. And I started screaming, no, I don't want to die. So sort of a mixed bag there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mason.
I suppose I was surprised by how my neck merges into my scalp. Never really noticed that before.
Richie.
I think I did it quite fast, from top of my head to my toes, and then back again. So yeah, I didn't really like doing it slow, but I quite like doing it quite fast,
So another time you can do it slower and see what that's like.
Yeah, my mind wandered a fair bit. Yeah.
Tom, the poet.
I thought the pulse when I got to my neck was strangely regular.
I didn't say that I was going to do this, but I want to talk a little bit about the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, because that's
Hold on, you forgot Maria.
And where's Maria?
Thanks, Jessica. I was hoping I'd get, I missed out there.
It's great the way we look out for each other, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I was a bit like Rosemary. It just shows you how quickly our minds can forget what we've been told to do. And you said about the body scan, and then I'd got the sound wrong on the settings. I thought you could all unmute yourselves, and I realized I hadn't done that when I thought I had. And then so I was thinking that, and then I was thinking about this morning what we all said about so what. So I sat with so what, and then think, not to sort of make anything of it for myself. So I was doing that, and then I noticed I have a lot of tension in my feet. My feet hold quite a lot of tension. I've never really sort of noticed that they feel quite tense and quite sort of, there's like a vibration to them, like a kind of a little humming vibration to my feet. And I noticed a little bit of anxiety in my chest and a bit of warmth, and then thinking, oh goodness, I'm not doing this properly, and then thought, so what, and then just kept coming back.
We had a beautiful quote today from Andy Warhol with "so what," and then Maria mentioned that she had talked to her father and said, "Dad, what did you say about, can't you just..."
When I was 7, I said to Dad, if you're going to be an alcoholic, can't you just be an alcoholic and not worry about it? So that's what I'd said to him. And he said to me, oh, you'll understand when you're older. But and then when I was older, he sent me a letter 4 months before he died saying, you were right. I should have just thought, so what? And so that was the story I told this morning.
So there's an expression in Zen, just this, and that's kind of like, so what, isn't it?
Mm.
Not making it bigger than it is. This is what we have to work with. Okay. I have to go like this so I can see all of you. Okay, this is going to be very quick, but there's the Four Noble Truths, which is the real basis of Buddhism. And last time I talked about dukkha, which is suffering, and it's a wheel out of kilter. And if you imagine, which I mentioned last time, a wheel with the spokes all different lengths. That wheel, as it goes along the ground, is just going to go bumpity, 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 and it's not going to be very smooth. And that's basically the story of our lives. This happens and that happens, and we're not able to say, so what? The origin of suffering is basically, one view is attachment. What I like is the disparity between things as they are and things as we'd like them to be. So I have a little label printer there, and earlier today, whenever I printed one label, 2 labels came out. That's suffering. And so I took the thing apart and, eventually figured out there was a piece of bent metal in there and fixed that, and now it's happy. But sometimes everything's perfect and we're still suffering because we're worried that it's not going to stay perfect. So it's a constant challenge. The cessation of suffering is very simple, and that's to either align yourself with the way things are the way things are, or to not be attached to anything. Very simple and not so simple. And Buddha said there's an eightfold path. And here's the eightfold path to ending suffering. another explanation of the Eightfold Path is that it's not exactly things you do, but rather it's things that noble ones have done. And it's great to learn about the Eightfold Path. And it all starts with right view, which I really like, because I think, you know, we have that saying, 1,000-mile journey is started with a single step. I like that place right before we make that step. I call it ground zero. And that's kind of the view. So you might, and then you go to thought, and then you go to speech, and then you go to action. So action is way down the road, and then livelihood. And all these things are defined in a very particular way, but they're also can be seen in a very loose way. The right speech is just a really, really useful one. It's one of my favorites, and it has to do with, is your speech honest? Is it timely? Is it helpful? And that's been really useful to me. Norman Fisher talked about before you send an email to take a breath. And that really helps, I think, with right speech. He was talking to all these, it was some kind of reception for all these business people, these like CEOs. And he talked about sending an email and taking a breath. It was kind of funny. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. And then there's 10 precepts. And we have a class every year, and it's going to start again, I think late spring. You'll be hearing about it soon if you're on the Appamata list, which I think all of you are. If you're not, send me your email in chat and I'll make sure you're on the list. And this is done every year. And every month we study a different precept. And the first one, not to kill, you can think of that like a lot of people respond to that immediately as, well, I don't kill people, so that doesn't apply to me. But you can think of all the ways that you do kill, like when you're with a person and they're telling you something and you're not listening, that's kind of killing. Or you're not looking at them, that's kind of killing. Or you're not paying attention to them. There was a time when we were giving bottles of water to the homeless. And we were across the street from where they were. And they were coming over to us. And then someone suggested, well, let's go to where they are. And then we were giving bottles, but we weren't really looking at them in the eye, in their eyes, and then we were doing that. So all these things, not stealing, you can think of it very specifically as taking something that's not yours, like, I steal my wife's coffee or something. She's not looking, so I drink a little of her coffee. So that's stealing. But then there's all kinds of stealing. So these become very broad, and it's not a matter of, these are kind of aspirations. It's not a matter of beating yourself up, but it's more a matter of paths that you can go and like levels of consciousness. And it's very beautiful. I think I've done the class at 2 different places, but maybe 4 times altogether. So it's something we constantly revisit. And I want to say a word again about mindfulness. And that's the whole business that we do, is this mindfulness. And to me, it's about, we're alive, right? We're alive for a certain time period, and then we're not alive, but we might be asleep also. And mindfulness is just being aware. And so many times, I don't know about you, but so many times I'll do something and not remember that I did it. I was making popcorn and I got a bowl out to catch the popcorn. It's an air popper. And then I went to get the bowl for the ear popper, but it was already there. So being awake is our challenge. And then you're interacting with a person. Are you really there? We came in the room twice, but are we really here? So that's kind of the whole business of mindfulness, and it's really important in Zen and in Buddhism. And I wanted to say this little paragraph about Zen is a school of Mahayana Buddhism that originated in China from the Tang Dynasty, known as the Chan School, and later developed into various schools. The Chan School was strongly influenced by Taoist philosophy, especially Neo-Taoist thought, and developed as a distinct school of Chinese Buddhism. And Confucianism is also an important part of Buddhism, Zen. Zen is practicing being awake. So if you did nothing else, that would be it. And once you're awake, Rosemary, were you the one who was referring to the fact that you were thinking about we're doing this for other people? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're awake, and what follows from being awake is you're more aware of how you might be impacting people. But the first step is to be awake. I know someone who will put a wet glass on a beautiful wood table. So they're not awake, right? Because it's going to make a ring on the table, and that kind of, gets multiplied throughout our life. Or we're driving and we're driving and we're using our cell phone. That's someone who's not awake, because if they were awake, they'd start realizing what might be the effect of their actions. There are a minimum of distractions on the cushion facing a wall, but if we didn't carry over the practice to the rest of our life, we'd be missing an opportunity to take care of ourselves and others. So, we talk about the practice, and there's a practice of sitting on a cushion, but then there's a practice that extends throughout your day. And that's really what this business is about. And some people think, oh, someone just wrote me yesterday and said, oh, my practice is terrible right now. So what they're doing, they're packing up their house to move. They've just endured the loss of a loved one, all this stuff. So our practice is always like there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on the cushion. It can be being awake to what we're doing. We're going to look at what 3 teachers say about Zazen that I really love. The instructions to the jury Monday were similar. Just look at the facts of the case, avoid your prejudices. Avoid being stuck in a certain perspective as you discuss this case with the other jurors. So it was not having a fixed view, but be open to what the others are saying. In other words, be open-minded to what is happening without prior judgment. I thought it was, it's probably the same spiel that the judge tells every juror, but I thought it was really good instructions as we face life. So this is by Reb Anderson, and Reb Anderson is a senior teacher at the San Francisco Zen Center, and he's come here to Austin many times. I've done things with him, and this is part of an essay he wrote that I'll send you all on Zazen as a ceremony. And what I'd like to do is maybe Maria could call on people, and then they would read a paragraph. Okay? So
Rosemary.
Okay. Zazen is the source of all the teachings and practices of the Buddha way. Although the word Zazen literally means sitting in concentration, it is not limited to concentration practice. All enlightened concentration practices emanate from and return to Zazen. Here, one's mind is concentrated without relying on any contrivance and is not necessarily continuously focused on any particular object. There are concentration practices, and if one is practicing thus, Zazen is just being upright and unmoving in the midst of such a practice. If we're not practicing concentration, it is just sitting still in the middle of not practicing concentration. It is simply pure presence, untouched by all human agency.
Just wait a second. Wait a second. That line is really, really important. This concentration that's talked about is really soft as opposed to hard. Like hard concentration is when your hands are on the steering wheel and your knuckles get red. And that's not this concentration that we're talking about in meditation. You couldn't sustain that for very long, that kind of concentration. It's more the concentration of, I think of an Indian looking at the horizon and waiting for some movement. And it's something that you could do all day long, and you could do for years, for decades, for millenniums, all that stuff. Okay, go on.
Many people attempt to concentrate their minds and, according to their own definition, are unsuccessful. Practicing concentration in this way often leads to feelings of frustration and upset. Even if one is successful in achieving concentration by personal effort, the mind is still somewhat disturbed by such striving. In Buddha's meditation, there is no such striving. Giving up the desire to pacify the mind pacifies the mind.
Claudine?
For this reason, if I give beginners Zazen instruction, although I usually suggest that they
sit upright
with a straight spine, eyes open and hands in the cosmic concentration mudra, I do not encourage bending the mind into concentrating
This
on
is
the
the cosmic
posture of
mudra.
breathing, nor do I discourage it. If someone asks for instruction on how to concentrate on posture or breathing, I'm happy to give detailed instruction on how to practice that way. Although concentration practices may be wonderfully beneficial and develop great mental skill, trying to concentrate on some object like the breath may activate a gaining idea. Gaining ideas are antithetical to the whole project of Mahayana Buddhism, which is to be concerned for others' welfare rather than our own self-improvement. However, we may not realize this right from the start of our practice.
So some people say, I can't meditate. My mind wanders. And that's what the mind does. And the meditation is not, if you have it licked, then you're doing something wrong in a way. It's what you can really work with is your mind wanders, and then you have to bring it back, and then you have to bring it back. And that's the advantage of being human beings. This is the best thing you can be in Buddhism, is to be in the human realm, because you have these challenges.
The goal of Zazen practice is the enlightenment and liberation of all living beings from suffering. That's the goal of Zazen, but the goal is exactly the same as the practice. In realizing this goal, one becomes free of self-concern and personal gain. Becoming free of self-concern and personal gain realizes the goal.
Okay, so we're going to sit for 5 more minutes. And this time, imagine you're in the corner of a room and just watch yourself sitting without any expectation of what might be going on. And you're sitting to liberate all beings from their suffering. And it might help you to imagine, to think of someone who is suffering and actually liberate them. Some of us know Sheila Fling, who just suffered a little stroke and is trying to get out of the hospital. And she might be in your mind, any number of people or things. There were 3 little bugs that had come in our house and died. So maybe I'll work with them. I don't know what kind of bugs they are, but anyway, try to think of something that you want to liberate, that you want to free. It could be yourself or someone else. I got sad about my 3 little friends who came to my house because I was also writing and reading about the homeless today and saw them as being the homeless. And anyway, I was with them. Anyone else want to share anything? Rosemary?
Yeah, so I was thinking of someone who's having a very hard time right now. And I remembered that in the same way, it seems that this person is having a hard time now that I have suffered a lot, way in the past. And yeah, so that connection kind of came to me. So thank you.
Richie?
and it's got
Wait,
very
wait,
thick.
part
Yeah,
of
the
it,
ocean.
start all over because you were
yeah.
muted.
Oh, sorry, I was
That's all
thinking
right.
about the sea, the ocean, because since I've been here, there's been a significant decline in life in it due to toxins getting into the ocean, pollution, and from various different things, overfishing, all that sort of thing. And I go down every day to the ocean, and I practice next to it. And it might sound a bit crazy, but I'll put my hand on the ocean, and I'll wish for it to be better. You know, wish it well, share whatever benefit from a practice I can with it. It makes me sad, and I was just thinking about the ocean while I was sitting here, and you know, I keep.
When you put your hand on it.
Oh. No, it sounds a bit crazy, but
no, not crazy at all. But is your hand getting wet in the water?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that image. And you wrote today about walking along the beach or something, right?
Yeah. I was. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else? Maria? Oh,
Jessica had a hand raised.
Okay, Jessica.
The text from Reb Anderson I've read before, and I really enjoy, and I appreciated this perspective, Kim, for our sitting. And as I was sitting, and as we were reading, I've very much been thinking about the statement that Flint says about we can either be led by our vow or dragged around by our conditioning. And so this orientation towards sitting for all beings, to me, goes right along with that, with being led by our vow.
I mean, it's a choice, right? That we can make.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Next, we're going to read something by Stephen Batchelor. And Peg and Flint came across this. And it got them to rename Appamada to Appamada, to name Appamada Appamada, which was one of the last words Buddha used, and it means care. And I've just taken a little bit from the from his article, but you know, for me, this is really important, this idea of care in everything we do. Like, that summarizes for me what this practice is all about. And when you're caring for things, you're awake and you're not separate from them. So let's see what he says. And Stephen Batchelor is a contemporary Zen teacher. So Maria, you want to do it again of calling on people?
Yes, Richie.
You're muted, Richie.
Nope.
Meditating with care. Let's look at the idea of care in a more practical sense for a moment. Just reflect back on the last period of meditation that we did here, or any period of meditation, unless we have an exceptionally perfect one. The instructions for what we did were very simple. Just sit still, be attentive to the breath, notice what is occurring within and around you. Don't get carried away by errant thoughts and feelings or memories and plans. Just stay present. It seems to be a very simple thing that we've been asked to do. But although it is simple, as we've no doubt discovered, it is not easy. In fact, what often rather upsets us or bewilders us is how extraordinarily difficult this very simple thing can be. Do you want me to pick someone else?
Alison.
We've just plumped ourselves down on the cushion, and the bell has gone, and we're a little bit charged up and conscious. Okay, I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes sitting. Usually, for the first few minutes, everything goes very well. But as soon as it becomes routine, or as soon as we let our attention to the task fade away, what happens? We find ourselves suddenly invaded by thoughts and feelings and images and memories and fantasies that we have not intended in any sense to give rise to. They're suddenly there. And what's curious also is that we don't actually, or at least very rarely, notice when they arise.
Thomas?
We're sitting here on our cushion, focused on what we consider our sense of what is good, namely being mindful, being present, being conscious, being aware. And suddenly we're no longer mindful and present and conscious and aware. We're not actually here at all. We're off somewhere else. We're thrown into a kind of forgetting, a kind of forgetfulness. Sometimes if a very powerful fantasy takes hold, it's very vivid and clear. We keep replaying it and indulging in it. But very often what carries us off is something that when we come out of it, we can barely recall.
Jessica?
We've probably had the experience of sitting in meditation. Everything's going fine, and then the bell goes. You kind of come to, you actually might be a little bit woken up by this bell. Not that you've been asleep, but you've simply not been present. You've been elsewhere and aware dimly that many minutes have elapsed since the last time you noticed your breath. And although it must have been something engaging to have taken you away, you can no longer even remember it. You might dimly recall some fantasy that is now receding rapidly, a bit like when you wake up in the morning sometimes and you've had a very vivid dream. But as you open your eyes, all that remains is a kind of dim, dull recollection that you seek to claw back to, but it's gone.
Nancy?
What this shows us is the extent to which we live much of our lives in a kind of forgetfulness. In any kind of activity that becomes routine, like driving a car, for example, it's very easy for the motor functions of the organism to take over and for the mind just to drift, and we simply not aware.
Mason knows a lot about the brain. So Mason, is this purely a human deal, this forgetfulness, this not mindfulness?
I wouldn't say it's just a human deal, but there's like a huge burgeoning research interest of a lot of people in the United States on mind wandering. A lot of people, there are some people at Duke who are studying this, what they call this difference between intentional mind wandering versus unintentional mind wandering.
And what is it that we do in Zazen, intentional or unintentional?
I don't know if we would characterize it at all as mind wandering, but that's a great question. I've been thinking about that, and no one has really attempted to combine Zazen or mindfulness and mind wandering, although they found in some studies that people who are more likely to intentionally mind wander are also more likely to engage in mindful tasks. So that's the extent of that research, that connection at least.
Thank you. Okay.
Becky?
Becky, you're muted.
Thank you. Now this, I think, is a way of talking about pamada, the opposite of apamada. I gave the example at the beginning, the state of being drunk or forgetfulness, of unconsciousness. In this sense, apamada or care is really about being fully conscious, being fully present. And being fully present is what guards the mind against what gives rise to affliction. As long as we're present, it's actually very difficult for those impulsive, errant, distracted thoughts to take hold. As soon as that presence of mind slips, the next thing you know, we're off.
Lisa?
In the writings of the 8th century Indian Buddhist poet, philosopher, and moralist writer Shantideva, the afflictions, which is how I'm translating the kilesas, the defilements, the negative states of mind, are compared to bands of thieves who roam around us, waiting for an opportunity, he says, to invade the house of our mind and steal its treasures. He compares mindfulness to a guardian at the gateway of the senses that is continually alert to the potential incursions of attachment, aversion, greed, jealousy, whatever, that are and feel like things that are waiting to kind of invade us. This image helps point out that appamada, this kind of careful, conscious awareness, is the very opposite of that loss of attention that allows us to be forgetful, carried away, or lost.
Isn't that beautiful?
Mm.
Okay.
Rosemary? Oh. There you go.
Now, of course, the problem is that when we are distracted in that way, we are not conscious of being unconscious. By definition, we were conscious of what was going on at the time. If we were conscious of what was going on at that time, we would not be distracted. Distraction is something that we are necessarily not aware of. We might be aware of the first moment, let's say a seductive image coming into the mind, but when it takes hold, we lapse into a kind of semi-conscious, if not completely unconscious state. That is pamada, the loss of consciousness. If it doesn't mean that you then cease to function. We don't suddenly collapse into a blubbering heap on the floor. We still appear to be functioning perfectly, adequately, and perfectly well. I think the alarming truth is that we spend a lot of our lives like that, probably a lot more than we would rather admit.
Claudine?
The practice of appamada, of taking care, is to be continually on our guard about the loss of consciousness. Then, instead of consciousness being just a series of moments separated by gulfs of unconsciousness that constitute our day, our lives become more and more present. Our lives become more and more present, alert, attentive, here, mindful, rather than the opposite.
Let's sit with care, just as a mother, and this wasn't part of Bachelor's article, but it's in one of the chants we do, and I really love it. Just as a mother would protect her only child with her life, even so let one cultivate a boundless love toward all beings. And I really love that. And so the assignment for this next 2 weeks is to be awake, alert. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're sitting every Wednesday at 12:05. So a lot of you have been coming. So I really appreciate that. And the world appreciates that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. This was great.
Hey, Kim, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Could you share this document with us?
Yeah, I'm going to share the entire document.
Okay.
I'll send that out. Yes. It's also on the website.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Could I
Bye-bye.
also give a plug for the Wednesday night program?
Yes, tonight. Yes, it's very important tonight, especially.
Yeah, tonight Lori will be facilitating Wednesday
And we're
night.
having guests from St. Andrew's School, and they come every year, and they're the most incredible group of high school kids. And so after the program, we'll have a discussion with them, and that starts at 7 o'clock tonight.